Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Christiana's here, Becky's here. iPhone 402, Juliana's here. Hi. Cheryl's here. Morning, everybody. Happy April Fool's Day, which I don't love. Maybe you guys don't either, but yeah, not my favorite holiday on the calendar. Because I tend to believe people and what they tell me. And so remember, don't believe anything anybody says today, except for me. I'm on a morning mindset because I'm not tricking you guys, I promise. Good morning. I'm happy to see you guys. Let's just jump right in and we'll let the call load up. We've got hi, Christiana. It's good to see you. Yeah, let's see who else pops in this morning. I'm trying to think if I have any housekeeping. I don't think I do. Let's just go. Let's just go, shall we? One thing I do want to say, if you don't forget, if you are in the IFS deep dive or you are, well, if you're here at all, you have access to the library, the Monday Morning Mindset Library. Just in case, like, you want to go back and you want to listen, or you're having a crummy day and just kind of need to tune up or whatever, they're kind of tagged by topic. So you can always go back and listen to those, or if you just need more of me, which, I mean, of course, right? Okay. So what are we talking about today? We are talking about fear, courage, and discipline to step into new things. Yeehaw. I'm going to mute all of you guys. Fear, courage, and the discipline it takes to step into new things, whether that is a calling, whether that's a new season, that's a new job, that's a new relationship, that's ending of a relationship, a move, whatever it is, all of these things are really common at midlife. And so that's why we talk about them, because it's such a transition time. There's a lot of stuff going on. So I'm hesitant sometimes to be like, okay, when you're trying to step into a new calling, because that just wraps some of you guys around the axle, like, I don't know what I'm doing, my calling or whatever. So let's just ease up on the language a little bit. Okay. So just the courage it takes to step into new things, because what's the problem? Well, we're afraid. Yeah. We're afraid of the unknown. We're afraid of all kinds of things. And so let's talk about it today, because I want just to remind you guys of stuff that I know you know. I know you know all this, but I'm just giving you a reminder because we got to be reminded. Okay, fear, courage, and discipline. That's what we're talking about today. So, I think I said on Boxer it was like faith, courage, and fear, or something like that. Anyway, that's all kind of tied together. So let's talk about it. So the first thing I want to ask you guys to think about this morning is like, what's the payoff for fear? Go ahead and think about it for a minute. What's the payoff for fear? Those of you guys who tend to kind of dwell in it, you can also call it procrastination. You can call it avoidance. That time when you're running all the scenarios and you're getting all catabolic and getting all up in the thoughts and the what ifs, and you're taking polls of everybody around you and you're pleasing all the invisible armies. What's the payoff for that? I just want you guys to come up with the answer in your head before I tell you. I don't have to do anything. Yeah, that's right. Christiana for the win. I don't have to do anything. That's the payoff. People always say, well, there's no payoff. And it's like, no, there is. There absolutely is. If there wasn't a payoff, you wouldn't do it. The payoff is of all of those things, you can feel like you're doing something, but you're actually not doing anything, and it's keeping you safe. Okay. So procrastinating on decision you need to make, procrastinating on action that you want to take, or whatever, you can trick yourself into thinking you are doing something because you're running all the scenarios and you're taking polls, finding out what everybody thinks and pleasing everybody or whatever. But what's actually happening is nothing. And as one of my teachers said, you can't edit a blank page. Got to put something on a page in order to be able to edit it. But we trick ourselves into thinking we're doing something when really we're not doing anything. We're avoiding. Okay. So I just want you to be aware of that pattern if it exists in you, because it exists in most of us from time to time. Like, so there's two things that we're doing in this. Oh, balloons. Oh, it just delights me every Monday. So there's two things that we're kind of doing in this place of avoidance, where we're acting like we're making moves, but we're really not. the one thing, there's one reason, or it's two reasons we're doing this. The first one is like, I don't have to try because I might potentially fail and I can't fail. Failure is illegal for some of you guys. We're going to talk about that too. I'm not going to try because then I don't have to worry about failing. Talk about that in a sec. And then two, and this one's a little more insidious, I don't actually have to do the work of whatever it is I want to do. I can just talk about it, which is what most people do, right? You know, people like this are always talking and talking about stuff they're going to do, but they never actually do it. Yeah, maybe you're one of those people. I've been one of those people. It's common, but I want to call it out so that we can do something about it. Okay. So the two things, like, I don't want to have to try because I might potentially fail, quote unquote. And then the second reason that we're kind of get stuck in these fear loops is that I don't actually have to do the work. I can just talk about doing the work, which makes it look like I'm doing the work, which I'm not. Okay. Question: what's harder? What's harder? The fear of failure or the fear of regret? What's worse? Regret's worse. Regret's way worse. And that's kind of what a lot of people unfortunately discover at the end of their lives. They say things like all these hospice nurses and stuff have written books on what people say and like study people who are dying and whatnot. And they say that the number one regret of the dying is that I didn't actually do some of the things that were important to me because I was afraid, or I was afraid of what people would think, or I was afraid to fail, or I was this or that, or whatever. But some people just, man, it's just easier not to. But is it? Because regret is a big pain in the ass. Okay. So that's what I want you guys to think about. Like, take a second and just think about if there's something that you are procrastinating on, avoiding, um, going around in catabolic circles about how you're never good enough to do anything. Just take your pick. Take your pick. Like, what's your favorite brand of avoidance? What's your favorite brand of fear? Is it, asking for everybody's opinion and then doing nothing? You having 19 opinions. You know what they say about opinions. Yeah, right? And don't forget, guys, you ever notice how, like, I don't give you guys advice? This is a total aside, but I'm going to say it. I was reading the book of Job this morning. And if you're familiar with the book of Job, Job is like the guy that, um, you know, God allowed Satan to mess with, and he just destroyed his family and killed everybody and killed all his livestock and covered him with swords. It was terrible. Like, when people talk about the life of Job, that's what we're talking about. It's like extreme suffering. Okay, well, the part of Job that people don't remember is he had these three total loser friends who came over, and instead of shutting their mouths and just sitting with Job when he was suffering and grieving, they kept giving him advice. They kept saying, well, obviously, the reason you're going through this is because you've disobeyed God. And Job's like, where? Like, what have I done? Please tell me what I've done. I'll fix it. Right. My point is, and I thought about this morning, when people give you advice, don't forget that they are giving you advice from their worldview and their perspective and their life. They are telling you what they would do in your situation. That's why it's usually worthless, because they are not you. They don't know the situation like you know the situation, right? So this is how, guys, we learn to trust ourselves. Yeah. Like, you learn to trust yourself by saying, well, I know what, there's nothing wrong with wise counsel, but just don't forget that there's a balance there. Like, yes, get some wise counsel, but if all you're doing is running around seeking advice from people, don't forget that they are telling you what they would do in your situation. And maybe their situation is very, very different, and their life story and their worldview is very different from yours, no matter how much you love them. That's what's wrong with advice. That's why I don't give you guys advice. That's why Job's friends should have just zipped it and not given him any advice, because actually, in the final analysis, they were wrong. And the Lord let him know. So, point is, I don't give you advice for that reason. And don't be afraid to trust your own wisdom, intuition, and trust your gut. If you guys are curious about something, if you are excited about something, if you are have something on your 12-month future pace that makes your heart just beat fast, trust that intuition, because that's also part of faith, isn't it? It's like, this doesn't make any sense to anybody and barely makes sense to me, but it seems important, so I'm going for it. Yeah. And of course, if you take a poll and you ask 50 people, they'll be like, what? What? You're going to quit your job and do what? Like, are you out of your mind? Because they would never do that, right? So this is one of the top regrets of the dying is that I just didn't do the things that were in my heart to do because I was afraid. All right. So you guys get what I'm throwing there. So why is this a mindset topic? Because Henry Ford was kind of famous for saying, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. So this is one of the things, like a lot of this starts up in here by saying like, okay, wait a second, what do I believe? What do I need to believe about myself to do this thing that I want to do? That's a great question. So you have this thing, you're like, and let's just not be like all woo woo about it. Like it's a really practical thing. You want to say you want to get your body in really good shape. Yeah. And you want to take care of your health in some way and, whatever it is, like, what do you need to believe about yourself in order to be successful at that? That is a great question to answer, right? Because in some ways, everyone else's opinion becomes less important when you're like, you know what? I just really want to be strong. I just want to be healthy into my 90s. Just want to be this. I want to be that. Okay. So whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. So start by asking yourself, what is it that I need to believe about myself in order to get out of this stuck procrastinating place? Like, let's call it what it is. And also, that's coming to mind too, is that a lot of times people are, they disguise procrastination with busyness. Oh, I'm just too busy. I'm just too busy. I'm too busy. Okay, guys, that's a pattern. Cool. I get it. Like life is busy, but don't forget you have the same amount of hours in your week as Oprah. Whoops. Right? Or Richard Branson, or, take your pick, fill in the blank. 168 hours a week, I think is the number. Anyway, so what are you doing with that time? And this again is where our process really comes in handy, because we quit lying to ourselves about what's happening and we get into what's actually underneath. So there's two things that are underneath, okay? The failure thing and then the work thing. All right. So to start off, what do you need to believe about yourself to move the needle on this thing, this change, this project, this thing that you're curious about, the whatever it is you might be avoiding? So answer that question and then decide, right? Let's just decide, you know what? I don't know how it's all going to go. And I might quote unquote fail and it may come out completely different than I think, but I'm curious about it. And this is important to me. I want to die without having done this, etc. You make the decision, then you take action on it. A lot of you guys make the decision, but you're not taking any action. Again, you're stuck in that stew. Like, oh, I'm going to think about it. I'm going to ask everybody's opinion. I'm going to think about all the things that go wrong or all the ways I'm inadequate for this task. By the way, if you've never done it before, you probably are inadequate for the task. Can it just save you the suspense? Yeah, you probably are inadequate for the task. That's how you become adequate, is by working on it, right? Is by learning as you go. Okay, this is why failure is required. Failure, in air quotes, is one of my favorite things to talk about, because not to go too far down this rabbit hole, but I just want to remind, some of you heard me say this before, but perfectionism is a trauma response. Many of you learned when you were young that you could not fail because it would kill somebody. Mom, your baby sister, whatever it is, you learn like, okay, well, what I need to do is never, ever make a mistake. And that grows into the monster of perfectionism. The problem with perfectionism is you never actually hit send on anything because you can't. Because by definition, if you're creating something new or something you've not done before, it is not going to be perfect. It's going to be a hot mess. And that's the way it works. It's like, expecting a kindergartner to not draw pictures because it's not going to get it perfect. What the hell does perfect even mean when you're a kindergartner drawing pictures? So some of the stuff that you guys are working on, you're all kindergartners at. Can you just embrace your kindergartnerness? Can you embrace it? But there's a part of you that's just like, oh no, I might not be perfect at it. Spoiler alert, you won't be perfect at it. And the failure that you're going to go through if you don't quit is actually, it's not failure at all. It's curriculum. Write that one down. What some of you guys think is failure is actually curriculum, and it's required for you to get good at whatever it is you want to do. Okay. So what the world needs, what God's calling you to do, what might be fun or interesting to you, or something that you're curious about, or just feels chancy but exciting, that thing that you want to get all the pieces figured out so you can do it perfectly. Like, another spoiler alert, like, if you can do it perfectly on your first try, it's not that interesting. It means it's already been done before, or if you've already done it before. right? So I'm asking you guys to step into the unknown. This is what we were talking about last week about walking the plank, right? What plank do you need to walk off of? The plank of your perfectionism, the plank of your certainty, so that you can actually chase down something that you frankly are not going to be great at. Oh my gosh. Some of you guys are like seizing up. Your throats are like, ah, I can't not be good at something. It's not safe. I had to be good at everything. Well, that's a trauma response. We should talk about that. Okay. Because it would help you to move that block out of the way. Because by the way, nobody's perfectionism is helping anybody. It really isn't. Have you guys worked with perfectionists before? It's exhausting. It's freaking exhausting because they're so terrified of getting something wrong. I want you guys to get stuff wrong. Okay. You've heard me talk about this before. Do you know what SpaceX, maybe not so much now, but when they were first starting to build rockets, what they called it when a rocket exploded? They called it an RUD. So a billion-dollar rocket, like, Elon Musk just stroking checks just out of his personal bank account, and Tesla, whatever, stroking checks to send another rocket up, and there weren't that many more dollars to send rockets up, and the sucker would blow up. Do you know what they call it? They call it an RUD, which stands for Rapid Unscheduled Disassembly. They can call it an explosion. They called it a rapid unscheduled disassembly. Why? Because they knew what was going to happen. They knew that part of their R&D, their research and development, was figuring out what makes them blow up so they can make them not blow up anymore. This is why you guys have to try stuff and to have it not go like you think. Okay. Another way to look at this is I'm going to try some stuff with the full understanding that I'm going to not fail, but I'm going to have some unexpected outcomes. Write that down. Something doesn't go, if something you've never done before doesn't go the way you think it should go, question number one is, well, wait a second, how do I know how it should go? I've never done this before. And two, what I learn. What I learned from this. Because if I learn something from it and I'm going to keep going, it's not a failure, it's curriculum. Do you know what I think failure is? Quitting on something or never starting to begin with. To just stay in that place where we just talk about what we're going to do. Beyonce has a thing she said. She was just like, don't talk about what you're going to do. Don't tell me about what you're going to do. Go and get about doing it. Take all of those tiny stars and just do it and just get stuff moving. Most 90% of you guys come to me so stuck because you haven't moved on anything. You're terrified to fail. You're terrified that it's not going to be perfect. Okay, you are going to quote unquote fail. Things are not going to go like you planned. They are not. Because you don't even know how they're supposed to go because you've never done it before. And in so doing, you're going to learn stuff. You're like, oh, that didn't work. I'm going to try it this way instead. That's where the not quitting comes in. Okay. So question I want you guys to ask, what is something important enough to you that you want to quit on it when it gets hard? When you have 5 failures in a row, quote unquote failures, right? 5 IRUDs in a row. Did you know that SpaceX carries all of NASA's payload up to the International Space Station now? It's like they send rockets up once a week now. They would never have gotten there if they were too afraid of the RUDs. Now, that guy has some kind of risk tolerance that I can't even fathom. Everybody has a different level of risk tolerance, and I do want to presence that because that's a thing. But most of you guys come to me having done the same thing that you can do really well over and 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 again, and you're just unwilling to A, step out into something new, to walk the plank into something new, or B, stick with it long enough to see it work. Some of you guys have dug 1,000 wells, but they're not deep enough to hit any water. What do you care about long enough to keep digging until you hit water? What do you care enough about to fail 50 times? And I keep saying fail in air quotes because it's just not even real. It's not even real. It's a total fabrication of perfectionism, trauma responses. It's just Doesn't exist. Okay? Doesn't feel good. Humiliation sucks. Nobody likes that feeling when you're like, oh, that was really public, right? It sucks. But did you die? Did Elon Musk die when another billion-dollar rocket blew up? He probably wanted to, but he didn't, right? It's not going to kill you. Okay, so that's the first thing. Is I really want you guys to think about what it is that you care enough about to quit quitting, or to quit avoid, or to stop avoiding starting. What do you care enough about to just begin and quit quitting at? That should be on your 12-month future pace. That should be on your moon and stars. And I'm not saying you should go back and rewrite everything. I'm saying, like, the stuff that came out to begin with, do you care enough about it to quit quitting? To quit digging 1,000 wells that are only 3 feet deep and stick with one well and dig it 300 feet deep? Digging 1,000 different wells, also known as shiny object syndrome, is also an avoidance of your work. Like, listen, there's something that's burning in you guys, something that you really want to do. It can be a tiny thing. I don't care if it's not, you don't have to go cure cancer, but it's just something that you really care about that you've been avoiding because you're afraid you're going to fail. You are going to fail. But the only way you really fail is to quit or to never start. Okay. That's thing number one. Thing number two, the other reason we spend in this time in the little catabolic stew, taking polls and asking everybody like what they think and how we should do it and never actually doing it ourselves. It's going to be hard. That's right. It is. Digging a 300-foot deep well is hard. It's hard. Again, what do you care about enough to put up with the hard? I don't know what it is for you, but let's just use the example of getting into shape because it's so obvious and it's so clean. I just want to get in shape. I just really want to be, I just want to be an athlete again. I just really miss being an athlete, right? I just want to do that. Okay. You know what that's going to mean? 5 a.m. in the rain. When your bed is warm and your shoes are wet and it's cold outside and the gym is whatever and the this and that is going to mean all of that. What are you willing to commit to? And it is going to be hard. Quit waiting for it to stop being hard. Quit waiting for somebody to make it easy for you to do. My gosh, our culture, it's so gross. If it's not easy, people don't want to do it. And that's because we've had it easy, haven't we? I mean, relatively easy, compared to other time periods. Ever since World War II, like America, wow, we're on this upward trajectory, and we just have like a lot of people who think life should just be easy. It should always be an ascent. That is not the way it goes. It's work. So what do you love enough that you're willing to commit, that you just, even if you feel like you've quit on it 50 times, like I have, like writing a book, man, I've quit on that so many times because I always get distracted and there's a million other things to do. And I have 50 million words behind me on these shelves and I keep coming up with all this nonsense, but I know that it's my calling. Like, it's part of it. And it's so I never really abandoned it. I think about abandoning it. Like, you know what? Who cares? There's plenty of books in the world. Who cares what I have to say? I care and God cares. Okay. So yes, it's going to be hard and it's going to take a long time. There was this meme that went around on Facebook or Instagram for a while, and it was a kid trying to decide whether or not he should go to medical school. And he talked to his mom about it. He's like, "Yeah, mom, but I won't even get out until I'm like 28." She goes, "Well, you're going to be 28 anyway. You might as well be a doctor." It's kind of true. Like, it's just like that's some mom wisdom right there. God willing, you're going to turn 28 anyway. You might as well be 28 and be a doctor. I mean, are there more things to consider? Sure, but I think the point was sound. Is like, I'm going to sit around and think about it for 5 years when it could have been 5 years in the medical school. You know, whatever. Stop waiting to think. Stop thinking about it. And how hard it's going to be, and whatever. If it's something that you care about, find a way to take it forward. And I've given you 50 million ways. The fear setting exercise in week 6, here's a question that nobody ever asked themselves, and they should. It's like, okay, well, I know all the things that could go wrong. Step 1 of fear setting. If I did this, where are all the things that go wrong? Step 2 of fear setting is, how would I mitigate those things? If those things did go wrong, like, what would I do about it? Step 3 is, what's it going to cost me to not do it? Go ahead and ask yourself that question. Something that's on your moon stars map, something you care about, something that you're stepping into in this new season. What's going to cost me to stay in this sphere and just keep talking about it and talking about it? What's it going to cost me to not do it? Go ahead and answer that question. That's the third step of fear setting. It's a good one. That's because that's where regret lives, right? That's when we get to the end of our lives and we're like, man, I did a lot of talking about that thing and I never did it. Do the thing. And you don't have to do the whole thing. You just imagine the whole thing done. And then you work it backwards. And what is every little step that you can think of? Those are your stars, okay? What do you care about enough to endure the hard parts? That's where the grit comes from. That's where resilience comes from. That's where discipline comes from. Guess what, guys? All those things are a muscle. Discipline is a muscle that you build. It's not a gift some people are given. No, that they're just really disciplined. I'm not disciplined. Guess what? Discipline grows when you use it, when you discipline yourself. Like, I am gonna sit down and write today because that is, I know there's a million other things going on and a million things trying to distract me, but I care enough about this thing to devote time to it. That's discipline. I care enough to get up at 5 a.m. and go out, put my running shoes on and run in the dark with safely, of course. But I care about this thing enough to press through the times that I'm like, I don't feel like it. Remember, we always say that fire girls don't live by their feelings, they live by their decisions. That's the discipline. That's the grit. That's the resilience. So first it takes courage to say, you know what, this might not come out. I might have a ton of unexpected outcomes on this deal, but I'm going to do it anyway because I care enough about it. Okay, that's the courage. But then I wonder if there's, there we go. It makes no sense how we do these things. But the second thing is like the resilience and the grit it takes to keep going when it gets hard. This is why I want to remind you guys of today. I know I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but this is the important work. Having the courage to step out into the thing, to walk off the plank if necessary, like we were talking about, and then to stick with it when it gets hard and you get a bunch of blown up rockets. Right? If you need to double back and you're like, man, just feel like I'm not quite sure what the thing is, go back to your purpose statement in week 2. The purpose of my life is to blank all the parts of myself. Remember that one? Okay, go back to that. Go back to your 4 core values. Make sure your 12 month future pace is fresh and like you have stuff on there that you're like, you know what, this is something I care about enough to make some moves, take some risks, and to stick with it. There's nothing wrong with pivoting. Okay, like, hey, whoop, that didn't quite go like I thought, and I don't really like this direction. I'm gonna just ease off 3 degrees to the right, and it's gonna be more like this. Oh, it's gonna be more like this. That's iteration. Okay, but quitting is saying, forget it. I'm gonna go pick something else. Okay, so the purpose in my case, when I talk about my purpose statement, the purpose of my life is to love all the parts of myself and God and express that belonging while helping others do the same. There's a whole lot of things that can fit under that category. That's a really big, wide umbrella. So if you feel like a little bit stuck, okay, go back to that purpose statement, but then drill it down. Like, okay, no, what that looks like in this season is writing a book. What that looks like in this season is getting people together in the fall. What that looks like in the season is getting my body really back in good shape to not sit so much or whatever. And when we start talking like that, what is failure in these areas? Like, you couldn't even define it. Like, oh, well, it won't work out like I think. That's not failure. That's just things working out like you didn't expect. That's not failure. Okay. Sometimes you got to press through those things. You put your shoulder into those things and press. All right. Stop expecting it to be easy. Because if you care about it and like it feels really, you like you're way out over your skis, pay attention to that. Okay. Because that's where the adventure is. That's kind of sometimes what God calling us into, like, yeah, you know what? You're also going to learn to trust me. This thing that I put in your heart, this desire that's in your heart, who put it there? you know, like God's actually going to give you a desire of your heart and not help you do it, but you're going to have to rely on Him, not on your own understanding, not on your friends' opinions, not on the invisible armies and their opinions. Okay, so don't forget, like some of the stuff that you guys are being called to in this season of your life is going to require you to step out in courage and then stick with it with discipline and grit and resilience. Okay, just a little Monday morning reminder. Hope you guys have a great week. Happy April Fool's Day. Be gentle as doves and shrewd as serpents out there in the world today as people try to trick you with stuff. Yuck. Ugh, don't like it. Anyway, I love you guys. I'll see y'all later. Mwah.